Your classmate Ellen says, when you multiply by a number, you will always get a bigger answer. Look, I can show you. Start with 9, multiply by 5, the answer is 45, and 45 is bigger than 9. It even works for fractions. Start with 1/2, multiply by 4, the answer is 2, and 2 is bigger than half. Ellen's calculations are correct, but her rule does not always work. For what numbers will Ellen's rule work? For what numbers will Ellen's rule not work? Explain and give examples. Well, it does work here. When you have two positive whole numbers, when you multiply them together, you will get a larger number. And it does work here because you start with a fraction, you multiply it by a whole number, positive whole number, and you will get a bigger number than the initial fraction. However, this wouldn't work if you were multiplying by another fraction. So instead of 4, if you were multiplying by 1/4, you would end up with 1/8, which is smaller than both of the fractions that you were multiplying. It also won't work with negative numbers because if you were to multiply any of these by a negative number, you would end up with a negative answer, which would be smaller than what you started with. Luke had a calculator that will only display numbers less than or equal to 999,999,999. Which of the following products will his calculator display? Alright, so we're looking for examples where this large number is multiplied by a number that's less than 1. So here is 1 and here is 1. The other two will end up being larger than this amount. So, because 15/4 is greater than 1, so this resulting product will be larger than this large number, whereas B and D will end up having products that are smaller than this large number. Kai, Mark, and Jen were raising money for a school trip. Kai collected 2.5 times as much as Mark. Mark collected 2/3 as much as Jen. Who collected the most? Who collected the least? Explain. Alright, so we can just tell from these numbers that Kai collected more than Mark because he collected 2.5 times as much as Mark. And when you take Mark's amount and multiply it by 2.5, you get a larger product because this is greater than 1. Here, Mark collected 2/3 as much as Jen, shows that Mark collected less than Jen. Because if you take the amount that Jen sold and then find 2/3 of it, you will see that that is a smaller number. Now, here's a picture that demonstrates what's going on more specifically. If you have this, to start with the first line, Kai collected 2.5 times as much as Mark. If you just draw a box and you say, this is how much Mark raised, right here. To find out how much Kai raised, you just take this amount and you draw it out 2.5 times. So if this is how much Mark sold, then this is how much Kai sold, 2.5 times that amount. And then we'll move down to the bottom line. Mark collected 2/3 as much as Jen. So if this is 2/3 of Jen's, then if this is a third, and this is a third, 2/3, we can just draw out another third. Because this distance right here is 1/3. So you just draw 3 of those, and you'll get 3/3, which is 1, and that's Jen's money. So you can see that Mark collected the least and Kai collected the most. The students in Raul's class were growing grass seedlings in different conditions for a science project. He noticed that Pablo's seedlings were 1.5 times as tall as his own seedlings. He also saw that Selena's seedlings were 3/4 as tall as his own. Which of the seedlings shown below must belong to which student? Alright, so Raul had either A, B, or C seedlings. Pablo's are 1.5 times as tall as his own, which means they must be taller because we're going to be multiplying the height of Raul's seedlings times 1.5, and because 1.5 is greater than 1, it has to be taller than his own. So right now we know that Raul has either A or B because he can't have the tallest ones because Pablo's will be taller. But we also see that Selena's seedlings were 3/4 as tall as his own, which means that Selena's seedlings are shorter than his. Therefore, we know that Raul has to be B because Pablo's seedlings are taller and Selena's seedlings are shorter. So we can draw that out. We have Pablo and Selena. can see in these drawings that if you were to divide Raoul's into fourths, so the height of the plant into fourths, Selena's would reach 3/4 of his. See, we just have that amount here. 1, 2, 3 of the whole, which is Raoul's. And Pablo's is 1.5 times greater. So if this is 1 here, we have that same amount here, and then we have half of this added up top. So that is 1.5 times as tall as the middle plant B.